Did you know that the future of South Africa depends on the way we raise our children today? In a country full of challenges, inequalities and transformations, resilience and awareness are the most powerful tools we can give them. Imagine preparing your child to face adversity with strength, empathy and wisdom, so that they not only survive, but flourish no matter what life throws their way. In today's video, I'll share with you proven strategies for raising resilient, conscientious children who not only face prejudice and hardship with dignity, but also become agents of change in society. If you want your children to grow up strong, compassionate, and prepared to transform the future, stay until the end. And don't forget to subscribe, as we have lots more valuable tips for your parenthood journey. Get ready to learn what really makes a difference in a child's education in South Africa. Lesson 1. Educate by example. Children follow what they see, not what they hear. In the journey of raising a child, there is no more powerful tool than example. We can repeat 1,000 times what is right or wrong, what we expect from them, what they should not do. But in the end, what really shapes a child's character are the attitudes they see on a daily basis. Words can teach, but it is the behavior of parents that engraves deep lessons in the hearts and minds of their children. In the South African reality, where so many families face challenges such as inequality, violence, discrimination, and economic uncertainty, the home needs to be a refuge of coherence, security, and direction. When a child sees parents facing difficulties with dignity, treating others with respect, resolving conflicts calmly, and taking responsibility for their own mistakes, they absorb these attitudes as silent, enduring truths. This forms the basis of resilience and awareness. On the other hand, when parents tell them that it is wrong to yell but yell often, or teach that respect is important but treat others with contempt, the child grows up confused. She learns that words are empty and that what really matters is behavior. This weakens the bond of trust and compromises character formation. Educating by example does not require perfection, but rather presence, coherence, and humility. It's recognizing in front of your child when we make mistakes, apologizing, showing that we are willing to improve. This teaches more about responsibility and humanity than any sermon. A father who apologizes when he exaggerates is showing that being strong does not mean being authoritarian, but rather being fair and conscientious. In practice, this means cultivating daily habits that we want to see in our children. Listening carefully, treating others with empathy, working with dedication, respecting limits, dealing with frustrations in a balanced way, and expressing gratitude for the little things. When a child sees these attitudes happening consistently, they begin to imitate them naturally because they feel safe and inspired. The example is also fundamental in the way parents deal with their own emotions. A child who witnesses their caregivers losing control frequently tends to react in the same way when they feel pressured. Therefore, taking care of your own emotional health is not an act of selfishness, but a way of protecting and educating in depth. What children see in their parents becomes the model they carry throughout their lives. Raising resilient and aware children in South Africa is a real challenge, but also a powerful opportunity for transformation. It starts in the silence of your attitudes, in your everyday choices, in the way you treat those around you. Remember, children do not need perfect parents, but authentic parents who live what they teach. Because example, more than any words, is what really educates. Second, teach how to deal with frustrations without violence or escape. Teaching a child to deal with frustrations without resorting to violence or running away is one of the greatest gifts a parent can offer. In an increasingly fast, noisy, and pressure-filled world, frustration becomes inevitable, but it is the way a child learns to react to it that shapes their character and inner strength. In South Africa, where many families face complex realities, such as inequality, insecurity, and emotional challenges inherited from previous generations, this learning becomes even more urgent. Frustration appears early. All it takes is a toy that breaks, a friend who doesn't want to play, or a negative response from an adult. These moments, which may seem small to an adult, are huge to a growing child. If she doesn't learn that these feelings are normal and that she can face them constructively, she will tend to react with anger, aggression, or isolation. The child who screams, hits, or withdraws into deep silence is not being bad. She's just trying to deal with something she doesn't understand. And that's where parents and caregivers come in with presence, listening, and firmness. The first step is to welcome frustration without minimizing it. Instead of saying it's nothing or stop crying, it's more powerful to say, I understand this made you sad, or I know you really wanted this. By acknowledging the feeling, you show that it's safe to feel it, that there's nothing wrong with being upset. This creates an emotional space where the child feels seen and accepted. From there, she becomes more receptive to learning a new way of reacting. After that, you need to help the child name what they feel. Give language to the feeling. Are you mad? Are you disappointed? Are you confused? This strengthens emotional awareness and allows her to express herself better next time. When the child understands what they feel, they have more control over how to act and no longer act solely on impulse. Another fundamental point is teaching alternatives. If your child is angry, help them take deep breaths. If she's frustrated about not achieving something, encourage her to try again or seek help. Show that giving up or attacking are never paths. But at the same time, don't hide from her that life will have many difficult moments. Teach her that she is capable of going through these moments, that pain is part of it, but that it doesn't have to be an end. This type of reinforcement builds resilience. The child comes to understand that even when they don't get what they want, they remain valuable, capable, and loved. Parents must also be aware of their own behavior. A child who sees adults exploding in the face of difficulties will repeat this pattern. Likewise, if she sees her caregivers running away from problems or avoiding difficult conversations, she will learn to do the same. It is in everyday life, in small reactions, that the example gains more strength than any speech. Teaching how to deal with frustrations is not about preventing them from happening. On the contrary, it is allowing them to happen in a safe environment, where the child can fail, cry, be disappointed, and still be guided with firmness and love. Over time, she will learn that falling is part of it, but that getting up is an even bigger part. And this not only prepares you for adulthood, it also develops an inner strength that does not depend on applause, victories, or external acceptance. By raising a child who does not need violence to assert himself or escape to protect himself, you are forming a conscious, courageous, and resilient human being. A future adult who will know how to face the world with dignity and who will be able to build a new path, not only for themselves, but also for those who come after. And this is how a generation is transformed. Third, cultivate pride in cultural roots and African identity. Cultivating pride in cultural roots and African identity is one of the most powerful pillars in the formation of resilient and conscious children in South Africa. In a country marked by a deep history of resistance, pain, and overcoming, it is essential that children grow up knowing and valuing who they are, where they came from, and what wealth they carry in their blood, skin, and collective memory of their people. When a child understands their origins and feels proud of what they represent, they walk through the world with more confidence. She does not bend in the face of stereotypes. She does not shrink in the face of prejudice, and she does not feel ashamed of her language, her name, or her history. On the contrary, she learns to see her culture as a shield, as an inexhaustible source of wisdom, beauty, and inner strength. This is essential for developing solid self-esteem and a strong emotional identity. But this pride does not arise alone. It's planted and cultivated at home, in conversations, in music, in the stories that parents tell, in the traditions that they keep alive in everyday life. It is in the details of everyday life that children learn to love who they are. It's when you cook a traditional recipe with them, when you teach them to dance to the rhythms that have rocked generations, when you share the proverbs of your elders, when you visit historical places with respect and reverence. Each gesture like this reinforces in the child's heart the certainty that they belong to something greater, that their story has value and deserves to be celebrated. In a globalized world where so many cultures mix, there is a risk of our own roots getting lost along the way. Therefore, we need to intentionally protect and pass on what makes us unique. Teaching a child to love their origins is not just an act of affection, it is an act of resistance. It's ensuring that she grows up knowing that she doesn't need to copy foreign models to be accepted, that she doesn't need to change her appearance, her voice, or her way of thinking to be respected. Above all, she needs to know her story and stick to it. And it's not about rejecting the new or living stuck in the past. On the contrary, a child who knows their roots is much more capable of embracing the future with courage, because they know where their feet are. She becomes more critical, more aware, more empathetic towards others, and more prepared to deal with the challenges that will come. Pride in African identity is therefore a silent force that sustains the child's soul, even when the world tries to tear it down. In practice, this means keeping the mother tongue alive, even if English is dominant. It means telling African stories, showing heroes from the people themselves, valuing traditional features, hair, names, and clothing with naturalness and respect. It means, above all, saying with words and actions that being African is a reason to be proud and not ashamed. When parents do this, they are planting a seed of self-confidence that grows strong and firm, ready to face any storm. And in the heart of a child who loves their roots, something blooms that no school or book can teach. The certainty that they have a place in the world, a story worth telling, and a future that can be built with dignity, courage, and conscience. Fourth, talk openly about emotions from an early age. In many homes, there is still the idea that showing emotions is a sign of weakness, especially for boys. Phrases like "swallow your tears," "you need to be strong," or "this isn't for children," are repeated without realizing the impact they have. What seems like an attempt to teach strength can actually stifle important feelings and create adults who are disconnected from themselves. If we want to raise resilient and aware children, it is essential to start by teaching them that feeling is not wrong. On the contrary, it is a sign of emotional health. When you talk openly about emotions with a child, from a very early age, you are teaching them that what they feel is valid, that they do not need to hide or repress their pain, frustrations, fears, or even their joys. This validation is the first step to building strong self-esteem and a balanced mind. Children who learn to recognize and express what they feel become adults who know how to position themselves clearly, make conscious decisions, and build healthy relationships. It is important to remember that a child is not born knowing how to name emotions. She needs an adult present and available to say simple things like, "I understand that you are sad because you didn't get what you wanted," or "you are angry because you felt wronged." This naming helps the child organize what they are feeling and find healthy ways to deal with it. If we don't do this for them, they will look for other ways to express themselves, often through aggression, isolation, or rebellion. Furthermore, by talking about emotions naturally, you create an environment of trust. Your child understands that they can talk to you about anything without fear of being judged or punished. This connection is powerful. Children who feel heard and welcomed become safer, more open to dialogue, and less likely to seek answers outside. Their home, in places where there may not be the same care or values. Another important point is that these conversations do not only need to happen in difficult times. Talking about feelings can also be part of everyday life. After school, on a walk, at bedtime. Asking, "How did you feel today?" Or telling how you dealt with an emotion in your day shows that feelings are part of life and that talking about them is normal. This takes the weight of emotion away and turns dialogue into a bridge between parents and children. In South Africa, where many families still carry the scars of the past, talking about emotions is also a form of healing. Breaking with generations that have learned to swallow pain in silence is an act of courage. Teaching a child to express themselves emotionally is a gift that spans generations. It's creating a new, healthier, more conscious cycle. Therefore, don't wait for your child to grow up to start talking about how they feel. Get started today. The sooner he learns to deal with what he feels, the stronger he will be in the face of life. And remember, you don't need to have all the answers. The most important thing is to be present, really listen, and show that feeling is not weakness. It is, in fact, one of the greatest signs of strength. Fifth, show that mistakes are learning opportunities. In many families, especially in challenging contexts like those experienced by so many people in South Africa, mistakes are still seen as a sign of weakness, inattention, or even failure. But this traditional view needs to be transformed, because when we teach a child to fear failure, we also teach him to fear growth. Raising resilient and aware children requires us to see error not as an enemy to be avoided, but as a teacher to be listened to. From an early age, our children must understand that failing is part of the process of learning, improving, and maturing. Every time they make a mistake and receive only criticism or punishment, they miss a valuable chance for reflection. On the other hand, when we are patient and guide this child to understand what went wrong and how to do it differently, we are planting seeds of emotional intelligence, courage and humility. Imagine a child who drops something on the floor or makes a mistake when trying to solve a problem at school. Many parents' first reaction may be to reprimand firmly, as if the error were a threat to authority or order. But if instead the parent calmly says that it's okay to make mistakes and that the most important thing now is to understand what can be done to improve, that child will learn to look at their stumbles with maturity, not with shame. This type of response strengthens the bond between parents and children and emotionally prepares the child to face the world without fear of trying. Error, when handled well, awakens fundamental life skills. Self-responsibility, creativity to seek solutions, resilience in the face of difficulties and perseverance. It also opens up space for dialogue, because when parents accept the error with listening and presence, the child feels safe to talk about what they think, what they feel, and how they want to act from there. And when she feels that security at home, she is more likely to carry that inner strength with her throughout her life. In practice, this means changing small, everyday attitudes. Instead of asking, "Why did you do that?" ask, "What did you learn from that?" Or "What can be done differently next time?" These questions are not only kinder, they are more effective. They take the child out of the feeling of guilt and take him to the realm of learning and awareness. And this is the true path to raising children who do not give up in the face of difficulties, who are not ashamed to try again, and who learn to become better with each new step. By teaching your child that mistakes are part of the process, you are teaching them to be human, to have compassion for themselves and others, and to move forward with more confidence. After all, no one becomes strong without first falling a few times, and the way we stand up is what defines who we really are. Sixth, impose limits with affection and constancy. Imposing limits with affection and constancy is one of the most important pillars in raising resilient and conscious children. especially in a context like South Africa, where many families face not only individual challenges, but also deep social and historical pressures. When a child grows up without clear limits, they feel that the world is unpredictable, and this creates emotional insecurity. On the other hand, when limits exist but are applied rigidly or severely punished, the effect can be the opposite of what is desired: fear, rebellion, or resentment. The secret is in balance. Limits should not be shouts, threats, or cold impositions. They must be built with affection, firmness, and repetition. It is important that the child understands that limits are not punishments, but guidelines for their own good. Saying no, for example, can be an act of love when done with empathy. When a child asks for something that is not healthy or appropriate, and you patiently refuse and explain the reasons, they learn more than if you simply give in or punish. Constancy is what gives the limit real power. A rule said today and ignored tomorrow completely loses its effect. Children need predictability to trust what is being taught. If you establish a bedtime, for example, but allow it to be constantly broken, she will not learn the importance of discipline, nor will she take other guidelines seriously. This does not mean being too rigid, but rather maintaining coherence. Being constant means keeping your word, repeating instructions firmly, and not giving up when there is resistance. Patient repetition teaches more than any punishment. Affection acts as the bridge that connects authority with emotional security. Children who receive love at the same time as they are guided learn to trust their parents and, consequently, themselves. They grow up knowing that there are limits in the world, but that these limits are there to protect them, not control them. When you look your child in the eye and explain why he can't do something, when you hug him even after a correction, you are teaching him that love and discipline go together. In the South African reality, where many children grow up in environments marked by social trauma or lack of structure, this balance becomes even more vital. Limiting affection becomes an antidote against violence, against repressed anger, and against emotional disorientation. It forms adults who are safer, more aware, and less likely to reproduce destructive patterns. Therefore, impose limits, yes, but do so with the intention of teaching, not punishing. Be firm, but never cold. Be constant, but never inflexible, and above all, be present, because a child who feels seen, loved, and respected is a child who grows strong inside, ready to face the world with courage, balance, and dignity. Seventh, encourage autonomy and decision-making. Encouraging autonomy and decision-making is one of the pillars for raising resilient and conscious children, especially in a context like South Africa, where social, economic, and emotional challenges require new generations to be strong, responsible, and confident. Autonomy does not mean leaving the child alone in front of the world, but allowing them to participate in life's choices, even in small things, and learn to deal with the consequences in a safe and guided way. From an early age, parents can involve their children in simple everyday decisions, such as choosing the clothes they will wear, helping to put together the lunchbox, or deciding between two activities on the weekend. It may seem small, but these small choices build an internal sense of responsibility. The child begins to understand that their choices matter and that they have an active voice. And more than that, she learns to think before acting, to reflect on options, and to deal with the natural consequences of her decisions. As they grow, these children gain the confidence to face more complex choices. When parents don't control everything, but offer guidance, they create a safe space for children to make mistakes and learn. This process is essential for developing resilience. A child who has always had everything decided for him will probably become insecure when faced with the challenges of adult life. Anyone who has had space to decide, make mistakes, correct and try again, will become someone stronger, more adaptable, and more emotionally prepared. It is also important to teach the difference between freedom and irresponsibility. Autonomy does not mean doing what you want, but rather taking control of your own actions within healthy limits. This requires dialogue, clarity in the rules, and above all, consistency on the part of parents. There is no point allowing decisions one day and harshly criticizing them the next. Children need to trust that they will be heard and respected in their growth process. Another essential point is to avoid overprotection. Many parents, afraid of seeing their children suffer or make mistakes, end up making all the decisions for them. But this actually weakens it. A child who never gets to choose, who never faces the consequences of a bad decision, grows up believing that the world is too dangerous a place to explore without help. And this undermines self-esteem and inner strength. In the South African reality, where many families face adversity and insecurity, this habit becomes even more valuable. Teaching a child to decide, reflect, and take responsibility is giving them a powerful weapon to face the world. It is preparing them not to depend on others, to resist group pressure, to make choices aligned with their values, even when the environment seems unfavorable. Conscious parents know that raising a resilient child is more important than protecting them from all pain. Autonomy, built with affection and limits, not only strengthens the child's character, but plants in them the certainty that they are capable of walking on their own, of getting up when they fall, and of making choices with conscience, courage, and wisdom. This is one of the greatest legacies you can leave your child. Eighth, prepare your child to face prejudice with dignity. Preparing your child to face prejudice with dignity is one of the greatest challenges and legacies you can leave for them. In a country like South Africa, where the scars of apartheid are still visible in many people's daily lives, teaching your child to deal with discriminatory attitudes is essential for them to grow up emotionally strong and aware of their worth. But how can you do this without making him feel helpless or hurt by these experiences? Firstly, it is important that you, as a parent, are an example of dignity. A child's words and actions are shaped by the attitudes he sees at home. If you respond to prejudice with anger, resentment, or hostility, your child will learn that these are the only ways to respond. However, if you demonstrate how to deal with prejudice calmly, assertively, and respectfully, you will teach him that it doesn't matter what others think or say. What matters is how he sees himself and how he chooses to respond. Teaching your child to understand prejudice rationally is the next step. This doesn't just mean telling him that not everyone is like that, but rather helping him understand that prejudice comes from a lack of understanding and respect for differences. Explain that some people may have negative attitudes based on fear or ignorance, and that this does not reflect anything on their value as a person. When he understands the true reason behind prejudice, it will be easier for him not to internalize these words and attitudes, but rather see them as a reflection of the other's limitations, not his own. Another way to prepare your child to face prejudice with dignity is to help them build a solid, positive identity. Encourage him to value his culture, his roots, and his achievements, regardless of what others may think. When a child has a strong sense of identity, they feel more secure in their own skin and less affected by the negative opinions of others. This strengthens her self-esteem and helps her develop internal confidence, which in itself is a defense against prejudice. You must also teach your child to respond to prejudice in ways that keep their dignity intact. Impulsive or aggressive responses often only fuel the cycle of hostility. Teach him to respond with words that reflect his inner strength without falling into provocation. This does not mean ignoring what is happening, but choosing a response that is polite, assertive, and reaffirms self-respect. Sometimes a simple "I don't accept that kind of comment" is more powerful than any confrontation. The most important thing is to make your child understand that he is not alone. Prejudice can be painful, but it is part of a larger cycle of resistance and overcoming. Remind him that people who have faced prejudice with dignity throughout history, like Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and many others, are living examples of how courage, patience, and dignity can break down barriers and change the world. Show him that prejudice does not define who he is, and that, with integrity, he can overcome any obstacle that comes his way. Raising children who know how to deal with prejudice in a dignified and confident manner means creating a stronger, more aware, and more capable generation of transforming the world. Teaching your child to face these difficulties with grace and courage not only prepares them for life's challenges, but also strengthens the next generation, helping to build a more just and respectful society. Today, you have discovered powerful ways to raise children who are stronger, more aware, and prepared to face the world with dignity, even amid South Africa's unique challenges. By applying these principles in your everyday life, you will not only transform your child's life, but also help build a new generation that is more resilient and full of purpose. If this content inspired you, subscribe to the channel right now and activate the bell, because every week we bring reflections and strategies that make a difference in the education of our children. And tell me here in the comments, which of these attitudes will you put into practice first with your child? Let's grow together on this journey.